Well, welcome everyone. It's wonderful to see so many people here to celebrate and thank Dr. Powell for his generosity and turning a wonderful room into an exceptional room that the rest of the campus will envy for a very long time. And I do have a few comments to make, including one or two funny ones. I hope you don't mind. First, some background. Dr. Powell received his bachelor's from FSU Meteorology in 1975 and his PhD under, of course, the renowned Professor Krishnamurti in 1988. In between those two degrees, he received his master's in meteorology in 1978 from Professor Alfred Blackadar in, as Dr. Powell puts it, the frozen tundra of Penn State. But some of us in the room won't hold his time at Penn State against him. Thereafter, he continued his long career at the Hurricane Research Division at NOAA, where he developed his groundbreaking H-wind project, which provided best estimates of the near-surface wind field of hurricanes that were flown by reconnaissance flights. This seminal software became part of the foundation for his startup company, many of you are aware of. Eventually grew into the powerhouse that's on the other side of campus, and which has funded many department students, both as interns and also after receiving their degrees. Dr. Powell has shared some wonderful stories of his time at FSU, including of faculty that are sadly no longer with us. And I understand you stayed at Sally Hall, is that right?
That's right.
So I'm sure you can share some wonderful memories that you had during your time there. I don't know that it's changed
That's
much.
why I had to study at Bellamy, because the floors, there was an inch of water on the floors from the water balloon fights at Sally Hall every night.
All started by you. But I'll leave the other stories for his time in the program in a few minutes. I'd like to add my own personal note that Dr. Powell and I have crossed paths, both knowingly and unknowingly through our careers. First, as I mentioned, he worked with Professor Blackadar at Penn State for his master's degree, and while I didn't work with Blackadar, during my own master's degree, I had a desk right next to his, and that was 20 years later. And I regret not getting to know him better, because his reputation. Secondly, as some of you know, every few years, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, NCAR, has a summer advanced studies program colloquium where PhD students attend 2 to 3 weeks to be taught the latest science in hurricanes in this case. And in 1998, I attended that as a PhD student. Dr. Powell was one of the 15 or so instructors. I'm assuming you remember this.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we don't remember the evenings very well, but we can remember the days. And I still have my notes from the colloquium, and I use them in my class. In fact, they're right here. And I'm not going to show them to you because it reveals how bad my handwriting has gotten since then. So thank you, Mark, for your generosity and for enabling students in our department for many years through this room to not only see the weather through their eyes through the window, but to compare it to the model analyses, model forecasts, the radar meteorology that are on this wall every day. In the short time this building has become occupied, the room has developed a reputation across campus for its uniqueness, both for its view, but also its teaching uniqueness. And you have enabled this reputation to only get stronger and last much, much longer. Finally, this growing collaboration will allow for a regular visiting scientist program between HRD, NOAA, and our department. And this will be a wonderful connection that we look forward to growing more. And before I turn it over to Dean Huckerbuff for his welcome and comments, I would say that we have a soccer game coming up soon. You may have heard, in a couple days, and it looks wonderful. So if you sneak here this weekend, I won't tell anyone. Thank you, everyone. Past, present.
Well, thank you, Bob. And that building right there was my home building, as well as meteorology's old home building. It's much different these days. About 10 years ago, 12 years ago, the dream, I guess, of this new building that we're standing in right now kind of came together when Eric Barron was the president. He put together a committee. Bob was on that committee, so was Jim, so was Vincent, to help plan this building, the new Earth, Ocean, Atmospheric Sciences building. It took about 6 years to get the funding in place. We had help from John Thrasher, who was president for a few of those years, and kind of the final push to get the funding from the legislature. We broke ground about 2016. And then in 2020, we had an event here where we had the official opening of this building with the statue downstairs of Eric Barron. And it was fantastic. It was in February. 2 weeks later, pandemic. So everybody left the building, and it was empty for some time. We're slowly getting back, though, and I think we're back to normal here on campus. So back to trying to do the things that we like to do on campuses, and getting the full use of this spectacular structure. This room, of course, was an intentional decision, I think, of the committee and the architects, because of the spectacular view, not just of campus and I guess Doak Campbell Stadium, where you can actually see the game, Jim tells me, if you have the right apparatus, but also because it helps with viewing the atmosphere and keeping an eye on the weather with your eyesight. And of course, the technology, the high technology in this facility really adds to it. Bob mentioned it, and we're getting great use out of it all the time. So when I met Mark first, I guess it was within the last couple of years or so, we had lunch. We were talking about ways that he might be able to help. And very generous individual with a history, as you've just heard. And one of the things that Mark's generosity is going to allow is for us to build an endowment that helps maintain this facility. When you have high-tech apparatus as that's behind me and behind the wall and over there and so on, you have to constantly pay attention to it and upgrade it so that you have the latest and you can do the most with it. So Mark was very generous in making a gift that is not only going to help today's students and researchers, but really for generations to come. So Mark, thank you so much on behalf of the college, the Department of Earth, Ocean, Atmospheric Sciences, Meteorology, which is part of that, and Florida State University. So thank you so much. Of course, this is now called the Powell Weather Observatory, aptly named, and we're very pleased with that name. I see that there's a plaque over there, which identifies that. So I think now that I'm going to pass this on to Jeff so that you can say a few words, and eventually we'll hear from Mark.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. It's been my pleasure to work with Mark over the last 4 years. First met him when he was working over at Parness over on Game Street, and we became acquainted, and I got an idea as to the type of thing he was interested in doing. And of course, when the new building opened up, he had a chance to come over and take a look at it. It kind of became rather apparent as to what you wanted to do here, and we're very gracious that you have. I do know that in addition to studying while you're in school, you're also very interested in the sailing club. You're very an active part of that. And something that many of you may not know is the fact that on a personal note, he's also gotten into windsurfing since he's retired and has become rather proficient at it, from what I hear. So much so you competed in Italy not too long ago, I believe.
I tried to.
And I think there's going to be another opportunity in Australia next year, if I'm not mistaken. But that's what he's doing in terms of his retirement. But before that, of course, he saw it fit to leave his mark here at FSU, and we're very grateful that you have. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Mark Powell.
Thank you, everyone. Dean, Bob, Jeff, thank you very much for setting this up. And I'm very pleased to see all of you who were able to attend, including some of my NOAA colleagues from my days in Miami, who are both FSU graduates. Jack Parrish, who's a legend in hurricane flying circles, and Shirley Murillo, now Deputy Director of the Hurricane Research Division. My friends from windsurfing who are here. I should point out that Jack Parrish here taught me how to windsurf.
1981.
There were times where we kind of found ways to leave work a little early to go windsurfing. Tom Rogers, who is a classmate of mine at Penn State, who also has a FSU degree, went on to work for the state here in air quality. Steve Cock, who worked with me when establishing, well, we worked together on the Florida Public Hurricane Loss Model, and helped when I was doing the startup, helped with some of the coding and other things we needed to do. It's great to see faculty here. Henry, who specializes in the mesoscale meteorology. Another NOAA colleague, Andrew Watson, who is the Science and Operations Officer with the Weather Service here. We go way back to his days when, with the Florida Area Cumulus experiment, we were both in the same building in Miami. He was going out to the Everglades or flying and doing all kinds of cool stuff every day. Other faculty here, Mark Barassa, we have a lot of common interests in air-sea interaction. Basu Misra, and they were, when I decided to come back to Tallahassee in 2008, the Center for Ocean Atmospheric Prediction Studies at that time was the NOAA Applied Research Center, and they very kindly welcomed me, provided an office for me to continue working as a NOAA scientist. And it was there I got the opportunity to interact with lots of graduate students, two of whom I hired when I started the H-Wind business. Mike Kozar's one of them. He's here in the corner here. It's really great to see everyone. My partner Sylvia, my son Riley, it's a real pleasure to be here. And Richard Benham, who was my mentor with my startup, and now in the College of Law on the faculty there. So thank you very much for coming. I wanted to say a little bit about how I got started. Bob made a comment in the, I think this is an article on the website of Arts and Sciences about me being recruited. number, that's not quite right. I came in through the transfer portal. I was like a walk-on and that somehow got in here from the State University of New York Maritime College, which was not really up there in the list of academic institutions, but had a great sailing team. So when I came here to Florida State, I had a really tough time. I was struggling. I was taking physics, differential equations. Those two courses were extremely tough for me, coming from a place where I was number 3 in my class, and then coming here and realizing that I had to relearn calculus, that I had to spend every waking moment almost working on physics to get a passing grade. So I went from coming here struggling, worrying whether I'd be able to pass a class, and how am I ever going to graduate, to gradually getting my confidence up and gradually starting to improve by putting the time in, and then after getting that degree, it's like, oh, well, maybe I could go on and get a master's degree. So, where should I go that has, I'm interested in air quality, turbulence, and diffusion. So Penn State was like the top place for that. So I went over there. Like you said, I worked with Al Blackadar and Hans Panofsky too. And then luckily got an opportunity to come back down to Florida as a summer student for what was then the National Hurricane Research Lab. And that caused me to pivot find a way I could, actually pivoted completely on my master's thesis at Penn State to do something directly related to hurricanes. So I actually I did 2 master's theses because I was pretty far along. But that ended up getting me the job in Miami when NOAA suddenly had a funding opportunity and was able to actually hire people. Usually it's really tough to get jobs in the government. So I was very fortunate to come in with a cohort back then with the Hurricane Strike project. I got a chance to fly into hurricanes. Very quickly realized that I wasn't doing much better with hurricanes than I was in a training cruise on a merchant marine ship going from New York to Scotland. So I was like, I gotta find a way to be useful, because I'm not very useful on these airplanes if I get sick half the time. So back then, NOAA's P-3 Hurricane Hunter aircraft, which are basically flying laboratories, they had an aircraft satellite data link. I still find it very surprising that back then, 1977, they actually had an aircraft satellite data link sending data back to the National Hurricane Center. And so at the Hurricane Research Division, we're on one floor below the Hurricane Center, and we interacted a lot. You got to go up there and talk to the forecasters, get to know them, see how they worked, and I could not believe how they were using this information, or not using this information that was being sent to them at great risk by these people risking their lives in the storm. So that suddenly became another pivot, and that became my purpose in life, was to, how can we get this information to help them do a better job? So basically 30 years of my career was spent on that, and I failed. The whole purpose was to I developed this technique to bring in not just aircraft observations, but everything else we could get our hands on, and create a map of the surface wind field. And this would be an objectively analyzed picture of this surface winds of a hurricane, the intensity of the hurricane. The whole idea was to transfer that to the National Hurricane Center. but it went to this something called the Valley of Death, from research to operations. There's this Valley of Death you got to get across, and I was not able to get across that chasm for every reason except the scientific one. So luckily there was a way to get out of that, and that was by transferring it to the private sector. So NOAA was very supportive in providing the technical and legal power to back up my request to take that information, which was just going to sit on a shelf in the same warehouse that has the Ark of the Covenant. It's right next to that. They allowed me to take this information outside of NOAA to the private sector, which I did with a startup that Richard mentored me on. I was able to take classes at the FAMU Small Business Development Center while I was stationed at COAPS. After work, they had classes, so I could go over there and take classes on payroll and all kinds of aspects of starting a business. And then there's also something that FSU is involved in, the Entrepreneurial Excellence Program, which I'm not sure if it's still going. It's probably called something else now, which is a very intensive program for several weeks with other entrepreneurs to kind of get across all the kinds of obstacles you have to get over to form a successful business. There's just a tremendous support network here in Tallahassee to help me do that. So I left NOAA in 2014 to focus on this startup. We were the first business in Domi Station out by the railroad station, and we found a place. Let's see, actually, we were only there for about a year and a half, and we got acquired by Risk Management Solutions, the risk modeling company for the insurance industry. They model everything that can affect the global economy, including pandemics, earthquakes, basically everything you could think of. So that started a 5 or 6 year period of time working for them. We eventually found space in College Town, right next to Isabella's Pizzeria, which is the best pizza in town. And a hair salon right between those two. And it always amazed me, is like, this should be a intellectual corridor along Gain Street here. These should all be high-tech businesses, with all the intellectual products coming out of FSU. So we worked there. I continued working there through 2022, just this past January. I retired for good, and it's just been a fantastic experience. I love Tallahassee. I love Florida State University. I went to a basketball game last night, even though we lost to probably the best team in the country. We were very competitive. So I'm very happy to leave this legacy. I feel very humbled and grateful that I can do something like this for the university, for the students here. This is the room where a lot of ideas are exchanged, as students can get so excited about the weather. At Penn State, I used to call them the snow geese. Whenever there was a chance of snow, all the really nerdy students would come to the map room, and they would just be so excited, they'd be falling over themselves.
All meteorology students under.
I wasn't quite at my co-star was. But I just thought that was such a cool thing that students can get so excited about the weather, and they would, be congregating about these maps and talking about the potential vorticity or, advection or, some other concept. These are all concepts that are in the textbooks. And you can see it on the map, but then you can also look outside the window and see it there. And I've always been an observationalist. The power of the human eyeball is something that is undervalued. So just being able to look out the window and say, okay, so what's the visibility today? What do you think the visibility is? You have to, that's all in situ. You have to know distances of objects that you're looking at. So just being able to connect what's coming, this is important because we're looking west and we're looking south. So all the interesting weather is going to be coming from those two directions. In the summer, you get the sea breeze thunderstorms. The sea breeze line is coming in from the south, and in the winter, everything interesting is coming from the west. So you see all that interesting weather approaching. You can talk about it in the maps, and you can also watch the soccer game. Anyway, I'm just really pleased to be able to do this, and looking forward to the exchange of ideas too between the Hurricane Research Division and the FSU Meteorology Department. I know federal scientists you may think they have unlimited resources, but when I was at NOAA, I had to hustle to bring money in from outside to be able to do the kinds of things I wanted to do. I was very lucky to be successful. Had people like Shirley working with me, and it was always a struggle to even get support to go to a conference. So having the ability to come up here and exchange ideas, a grad student or faculty member can go down to Miami, present their work, or someone from Miami come back up here, is hopefully will be very fruitful. So thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So with that, Mark, thank you very kindly. We appreciate your words. Thank you all for coming. We have refreshments, drinks, eat, please stay mingle. And if you want to get your photo taken with Mark and the sign, there may be an opportunity for you.
Can I say a few words?
Sure.
I would just like to say that once the displays are turned on and you see them for yourself, you will see what a fantastic teaching tool this is, both in synoptic meteorology, mesometeorology, modeling, and so forth. And what a fantastic learning tool it is. And students do flock here whenever something is going on, just like they did at Penn State. They probably still do at Penn State. Also, one of the things that I do is to give a lot of tours to students at the undergraduate level who are thinking about coming, and also the graduate level. And always make it a point to bring them in here and make sure everything is turned on. And their eyes just open up wide, and they, oh wow, I've never seen anything like this before. So we thank you.